Hi friends, hello, welcome to Books and Crafts. My name is Martina and long time no see. I haven't posted a new video on this channel for quite some time and I really apologize about that. I got busy with work and I also got into a reading slump. In September I pretty much wasn't reading at all. It got a bit better in October and now I feel like I am out of the slump, which I'm very happy about. But you know, I have been reading a little bit and I've read some really good books in those past 2 months. So I would love to talk to you guys about this. So without further ado, let's chat about the books that I've read since September. So September, October and a little bit of November. So if I had a theme for my reading for these past 2 months, I would say that I was kind of catching up on the booktube favorites, on those big names in fantasy that I have not read before because I joined booktube even as a reader quite recently, and also because I'm Polish, I would say that different things are popular here. So yeah, so there was a lot of catching up, and especially on Brandon Sanderson and his Cosmere works and his Stormlight archive. So in these past 2-3 months, I've read The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, Edge Dancer, and Oathbringer. So the first 3 full novels of the Stormlight archive and also the novella which comes between book 2 and 3. And I loved them. This was my first time reading the Stormlight archive and I am a Sanderson fan. I love his Cosmere stuff. A Mistborn is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. So I was really excited to go into Stormlight, but also just a little bit worried. I really wanted to love it and I'm so happy I did. And I was so amazed at how Sanderson's writing style and prose and characterization, I would say, how much they improved from the previous series. Because like I said, I love his Cosmere works. I love a lot of them, but I would never say that I loved them because of his characters, and I am a character-driven reader, so this is huge for me. But you know, I love his world building, I love his magic systems, his plots, his plot twists, but I never was like super fond of the characters. I do love Kelsier and Vin and Elend. Okay, so maybe I like characters from Mistborn, but any other of his books, I like the characters were never my main focus. While here I just fell in love with all of the characters that we got the point of view from. I think they were so well done, so developed. I love the character development that we got in the novels. I loved how much time we spent in the characters' heads. Those were some of my favorite parts, you know, not the big reveals, not the Sunderlanches at the end, but those quiet moments in the characters' heads when we got to know them and we got to explore their past. I loved the flashbacks for certain characters in the books. I love those characters. I love Kaladin. I really enjoyed reading about Shallan. She wasn't my favorite in those 3 books, but she was one of my favorites to read about and to analyze. She's so interesting, so fascinating. I loved Dalinar. I think his arc throughout all of these books, and especially when in the 3rd book we get his flashbacks, his past, it just was incredible. I loved Adolin, I loved Navani, and this is not to say that I didn't enjoy the plot or the world building. I think they were expertly done. I love how, when reading the first book in what is going to be a 10-book series, you get this feeling that this whole world is already created in Sanderson's mind, and even when he drops those tiniest little things, tiniest little details about the world building, maybe about some peoples who live in this world, maybe about some traditions that they may have, you kind of get the feeling that he has it all figured out, that this is not just a random detail. At least for me, I really felt that this world was so well done, and it felt real. It felt real for me. I didn't feel kind of limited to where the action was taking place. All of the time, I kind of had the feeling that there is the whole world. And I feel like his other books, like Mistborns or Elantris or Warbreaker, they focus on a much more contained part of the world, while here in the Stormlight Archive, he constantly would hint at some other parts of this world, which just got me so interested. I gave all of the main books 5 stars, and I gave 4 stars, I believe, to The Edge Dancer, which is a novella focusing on one of the secondary characters, and it includes a lot of Sanderson's humor, and I like Sanderson's humor, but just in smaller doses, so it did not have the same tone, the same seriousness as the rest of the series. That's why it's not a 5 stars for me. And now I actually have to read another novella, Dawnshard, because before I can go to the 4th book. And honestly, I think I haven't read it yet just because of the novella. I don't know, I feel like those novellas kind of stop my momentum with the story. I would really like to go to the 4th main book, but I don't want to miss out on anything that is happening in the novella. I've heard really good things about Dawnshard actually, and I've heard that there is a lot of important Cosmere things and details in there, so I definitely don't want to skip it. But I kind of, yeah, like I need to be in a mood, I think. So I'm definitely going to be reading it soon. I am definitely planning to finish all of the books that are already out, so Dawnshard and The Rhythm of War still this year. So yeah, I'm just so happy that I enjoyed it, and I feel like this series is such an enormous project of Sanderson's that it's like there is really no good way to be able to sum up everything I think and everything I feel about this, but just know that I love the characters. I think out of the Sanderson's books that I've read, I think this is his best character work. You get all of the famous Sunderlanches, there is a lot of interesting reveals, and the plot, from where it starts to where it goes, it's just so incredibly interesting and fascinating and so well planned that yeah, I really highly recommend, if by any chance you haven't read it yet, because I kind of have a feeling that I might be one of the last people on BookTube who love fantasy and haven't read Stormlight Archive before, so yeah. And then I have another big name on my list, and that is Joe Abercrombie. So in those past 2 months I read Last Argument of Kings, which is book 3 and final of the First Law trilogy, and also Best Served Cold, which is the first of a trilogy of standalones which come after the First Law. And I love Joe Abercrombie so much. I think the First Law, I think I can safely say that First Law is now one of my favorite series of all time. It is one of the funniest things that I've ever read, you guys. If you like dark humor, but yeah, it's dark, it's not fun and fluffy and anything. This is a grimdark fantasy, but it's so funny, and it was so hilarious because I was listening to those books on audiobook, which I highly recommend because the narrator is extraordinary, and my fiance was actually listening to them in Polish, also on audiobook, and so we were kind of like buddy reading those books, and we would just chuckle all the time, like taking turns in chuckling. This was so fun. So the First Law is is perfect for me. I loved it. I loved the humor. I loved the characters. And I think Joe Abercrombie is one of the best writers that I've read from, who just have such a control over language and who can construct those incredibly brilliant sentences. It's not a flowery poetry like prose, definitely not, but it's just so clever, so brilliant, and like I said, so funny. I'm going to repeat myself here because, even though this is a grimdark fantasy, this is definitely going to go to my like comfort read list of books. Whenever I need a pick-me-up, I'm going to go back to these books. So I gave The Last Argument of Kings 5 stars, definitely. I loved how everything came together. This is a series which I highly recommend you, if you try it, you read at least 2 books out of the 3, because the first one may be hard. If you are a plot-driven reader, it might be hard because there isn't much of a plot. For me, this first book, it feels like a slice of life in the life of these grim, dark characters who are really bad people, but you kind of see them as they go about their days, and it's just, even though not much happens, or no, scratch that, I think a lot happens, but you don't have an overarching view of the plot. You don't really know where this is going yet, and I think book 2 is where the plot really picks up. But yeah, definitely if you're a character-driven reader, I would recommend. Also, like I said, this is a dark type of humor, so if you don't vibe with it in book 1, then I'm not sure this is going to be for you. But if you like it, but you just feel like you need a little bit more plot, then do give book 2 a try, because book 2 I think is my favorite of the trilogy, and book 3, Last Argument of Kings, is just as brilliant, and I really, really loved it. And then I read Best Served Cold, and I gave this one, I think, like 4, maybe 3.5 stars. This is definitely not my favorite of the Abercrombie's books that I've read. It's not as funny, I would say. There is still his incredibly clever writing and great characterizations. And it's also, I believe, out of the 4 that I read, the most plot-driven one. There is the most action and plot, and you have a very clear plot. You know where this is going. Best Served Cold, as the title suggests, is a revenge story, and so you kind of, unlike in First Law, in the Blade itself, you kind of know from the start what's the point of this story, what's the point of this plot, where this is all going. But I guess I loved the cast of characters in First Law much more. I didn't like the main female character. I appreciate that we got a female lead in this one and a female POV in Best Served Cold, but I didn't much like her, and I didn't understand how the other characters kind of put up with her. She was just... she was a lot. I did love the other kind of main character in Best Served Cold. He was one of the secondary characters in the First Law trilogy, so I was really happy to see more of him. So that was interesting. And I also really enjoyed all the little cameos from the original trilogy, and kind of seeing how the political situation changes a little bit within this. I think, I'm glad I read it, and this was by no means a bad book. I guess Abercrombie for me is such a character writer that I just have to vibe with his characters, and I did not feel much of anything other than irritation towards our main female character in this one. Still, I'm very excited to go to the heroes. I'm going to be reading it soon, and from what I've heard, from what the purpose of this next standalone is and what it does, I feel like I'm going to love it, so can't wait to see. And another big name on my list is Patrick Rothfuss, and I finally read The Name of the Wind, which is book 1 in the Kingkiller Chronicle by him, and I really enjoyed it. This is one of my favorite narrative structures, which is a frame narrative in which an older character kind of retells their life story, and I love this type of narrative so much. I think there's so much that can be done with this type of narrative to kind of keep me interesting. I love all the little kind of remarks that the narrator can make, like, oh, if I'd known then who this person will turn out to be, something like that. These little remarks, they keep me so interested in so engaged in the story. So I do really love this narrative structure. Now, this is a beautifully written book, so if you are one for the prose, if you enjoy beautiful prose, beautiful sentences, then you will definitely find them here. And also the story itself was really interesting. So we are following Quoth, who is currently in the current timeline. He is an innkeeper, and we get the feeling that he's kind of hiding from his past, that things happened in his past. He's living undercover in a way. And so one day this chronicler comes to him and wants to write down his life story. And so Quoth agrees on a condition that he will have 3 days to tell his story. And so this first book is the first day of telling the story. And we start with his childhood, then we go through his kind of education. There is some magic in the story, there is love, there is heartbreak, he goes through a lot, and a lot of it was really, really interesting. I never once felt I was bored. The only thing that kind of stopped me from giving this book 5 stars, and I rated it at 4 stars, is the character of Quoth himself, because he seems to be good at everything. And granted, he is the one telling the story, so we can't treat him as a reliable narrator, like not 100%. But what I mean is that not once I actually felt scared for him. Not once I had a feeling that maybe he won't be okay when this situation plays out, or that maybe something will happen to him. And this is not because of this narrative structure, because in Sun Eater, for instance, which starts with the Empire of Silence, we have a very similar narrative structure when an older character is telling their life story. And the thing in the Sun Eater is that you know that they've lived through their experiences because they are now writing down the story, but the way Christopher Rocchio wrote the events still make me so scared for Hadrian, and I'm just like, I'm on the edge of my seat, and I don't know if he's going to be okay, even though that kind of technically I do, because he lived to tell his story. Now, I did not have that in The Name of the Wind. I wish I did, because I am a character reader, and so it is really important for me to root for a character or to be kind of on their side, and I felt like Quoth just didn't need it. He did not need me rooting for him because he had all of it figured out, and even when hard things happened to him, and they did, I never felt worried, I never felt stressed. I wasn't emotionally invested in him. I loved his story and I loved his storytelling, but I didn't particularly love him. Still, I think this is a beautifully written book, and I'm very much looking forward to reading book 2 hopefully soon. And a couple of other books that I read in this period of time. I read Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and I'm actually surprised at how much I liked it. Did it make a lot of sense? No. It was quite ridiculous at times, but I think it was supposed to be. So Caraval, for me, had an atmosphere of something between a circus, carnival, and like an old school vintage amusement park, something in between all of this. And it was magical, it was whimsical, the prose was a little bit over the top with metaphor and similes, but I don't know, they just worked in the story. I didn't treat it as like a serious story. I just went with the flow of it, and yeah, it was so much fun. So Caraval, if you don't know, is a story about two sisters who have a very abusive father and who decide to get away from him, and they go to this magical competition called Caraval, which happens, I believe, once per year on a secluded island. And this is a series of tasks that you have to, and like riddles, and it was all very atmospheric, and you have to complete them, and the first person to do that will receive a magical reward. And this was really interesting. I really love competition trope in my stories. I really love riddles, and like I said, this just all had a very, very whimsical feel. So if you are looking for something that will completely transport you, that maybe, you know, the plot won't make much sense in the end, there were a lot of like plot holes that if you wanted to be nitpicky about this, you definitely could, but I didn't. I just I let myself be transported to this magical world, and I really enjoyed it. There is also a cute romance in the story. There is an interesting sister dynamic and family dynamic. So yeah, there was a lot that I liked about this, and again, I'm looking forward to reading book 2. I think in the second book we will actually get the other sister's perspective, which I'm excited about. And yeah, it was just a fun magical read, and if you are looking for something like that, then highly recommend. And so that is all of the books that I had to talk to you guys about today. Currently I am in the middle of 3 books already. So I am reading Demon in White by Christopher Rocchio. This is book 3 in the Sun Eater series, and I'm loving it so much. If like, I'm not done with this yet, but if I could give it 6 stars, I would already. so definitely loving the series so much. I've also started just yesterday The Lies of Locke Lamora, which I am also really enjoying. I am listening to this on audio, but I do have my physical book somewhere here. And I am also reading Bloodmarked, which is book 2 to Legendborn. Legendborn is a YA fantasy which I really enjoyed, and Bloodmarked so far is kind of taking me much longer to read than I anticipated for some reason, but those 3 books and perhaps some more I will talk to you guys about in the next recent reads video. So for today, this is everything, and I would love to hear from you. What have you been reading over the past 2 months? Do you have like any favorites that you read in this time? And yeah, just what you are currently reading. I would love to chat to you in the comments. And yeah, in any case, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon in the next video. Bye!